She
Welcome, everybody, to our third Creator Spotlight. I am Dan, and as always, when we do these interviews, I have Jennifer. Comics will break your heart. And today we are joined by Karla Nappi, writer of Duplicant from Second Sight Comics. Karla, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a mom. You might be able to hear my son in the background as my husband's trying to wrangle him upstairs. And I'm a New Jersey girl. I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I've lived in California off and on. Now I'm in Pennsylvania, and I worked in film and TV for about 15 years. And when I was working in TV was when I started going to comic conventions because I had some friends that were on panels. And then that's when I started kind of getting into comic books. At that point was when I started going to conventions. And then I decided at some point to try my hand at writing comic books. And that's what led me to Meltdown Comics in Los Angeles, where I took 2 different classes with Jim Higgins, who used to be an editor at DC Comics back in the day, and that's where Duplicant was actually born, was in those comic book writing classes.
Did you find the shift from like writing TV to comics to be a hard adjustment for you?
It was a hard adjustment for me. I mean, in some ways, I felt like all my TV stuff had helped me be able to write comic books because, I actually focused on editing when I was in high school in the film and TV classes there, and in college, I thought I was going to be an editor. And I feel like that's what's helped my sense of like pacing when I write. I have this like innate sense of like whether things feel like they're flowing correctly or not. And so I think things like that helped. And also like just the visuals of how to frame things and all that and describe them. But actually writing out the panel descriptions takes a little bit of time to get your head wrapped around it, especially for that first issue. It was like these weird mental like gymnastics trying to figure out how to lay out a page. And I think like in issue 1 especially, and I don't think I did this as much in future issues, it feels like what I did in issue 1 was like each page was like its own little story. Like it had like a beginning, middle, and end on each page in the first issue. And then I didn't really I don't think I did that as much on the rest of them, but that was probably me just wrapping my head around the medium.
You didn't do the Alan Moore 10 pages just on page 1 of the comic.
No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it was funny when I wrote in the comic book class the first issue. So those first, like, I want to say 4 pages were actually 1 page. But then when I was like reading it again, I was like, you know what? There's not going to be enough room visually for these visuals to live on just 1 page, and that's why I broke it up into the pages that they became.
When reading this, I was like, wow, this could flawlessly just go to TV. And like literally, to me, it read like a TV show. Like each issue was written like it would be an episode, how it would end, the cliffhangers, which you talk about how you like leaving. And your artist does a fantastic job with the facial gestures. They convey the emotion going on very well, so I wanted to shout them out.
Yeah, that was one of the critical things when I hired her. I had her do a test page, which was a pivotal moment in issue 1, and I was like, because I needed someone to nail that moment. It's when Pamela and Luke are alone, and so I was like, if she can nail that page, she can nail the rest of the book, and she completely got that page perfectly.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And of course, Layla Del Duca being involved. Like right away, I saw that and I was like, ooh, Layla's involved. And I love Shudder and Sleepless? Yes. Totally enjoy her books. And I'm glad you sent this to me, contacted me, because my shop is not very good. And we've had divorces many times.
Oh,
so
man.
this And I couldn't find this on Comixology either. So like, had you not sent me the PDFs to read through, and then I was like, okay, like we need to talk about this. So like, I wanted more people knowing this is out there and how to find it. And of course, you said already with issue 2, there's been issues actually getting their hands on it.
Yeah.
You know, I know that this, so there has been a little bit of a process. Right now, your book is published by Second Sight Publishing, which has been doing a lot of really great, like creator-owned independent titles. But this was initially kickstarted, and you know, you've talked about that a little bit before, but especially in the back of issue number 2, you talk about that process and basically like kind of how the sausage is made when you think about like getting things like this funded. Can you walk us through that journey, like from maybe like idea to kickstarting to getting it published? Can you talk about that journey?
Yeah, so issue 1 was written in the classes I took at the comic book shop, Meltdown Comics in West Hollywood, which is sadly defunct now. They got bought out by, I believe the entire block got bought out by like a land developer to like tear everything down. Yeah, I don't even know if like what state that block is in. For all I know, the building is still up and they haven't done anything. But yeah, so I had written the pilot script first, and then I did the comic book writing class and adapted the comic book out of the script. And at the time I was working 2 different jobs. I worked as a script coordinator mostly in film and TV. I had other titles too. I worked like as a clearance coordinator sometimes, as assistant to like the line producer. And so the way I was able to pay for the first 2 books was because I had 2 jobs. At the time, I was script coordinator on The Good Wife, and I was script coordinator on Brain Dead. So I was bringing in enough money to pay to make the book, and it took a really long time to make issue 1, the art, because Mariana was already working on another book at the time, and so her schedule wasn't really conducive to being able to do the book. And I was still kind of feeling my way with like just how to work in this medium and how to work with an artist and everything. And then I hooked up with a publisher almost immediately after I had finished issue 1, and that just became like a whole, unfortunately, fiasco that didn't end well. So, you know...
Was it bad idea?
You know, I hung on with them longer than I probably should have. There were things that my agent at the time did that kind of didn't help. And then after that, they did things that weren't helping. And at some point, Mariana got tired of it all and was like, I'm done. She got a job on the Witcher miniseries from Dark Horse that came out a few years ago. She couldn't tell me at the time what it was, but she was just like, I'm out of here. Like, I can't do this anymore because I don't trust that they're ever going to make the book. And these people are going to pay me. And, you know, I've heard the problem with this publisher was they weren't really communicating with us. They would tell us we would hear from them within like 24 to 48 hours, and like literal months would go by and we wouldn't be hearing from them. So when, who was it? The Dark Horse came around to her for the Witcher miniseries, she had like a signed deal within like 72 hours. So it's like,
you can't blame her at that point.
No. And you know, both of us were counting on the money too. Like when they delayed the book the first time, I had to like, you know, I had to go through a couple of hoops just to be able to keep her on the book, to be willing to hang on for another year until the book was going to be made. And then the next thing we know, they're like pushing things again, and they kind of threw like deadlines out at us without checking to make sure we were actually available. And so I was like, that's why I was writing issue 2. Well, I had like not even a 3-month-old at the time. So it was just a nightmare. You know, I got the script done on time, but then Mariana walked, which is why, you know, they were like, oh, well, we'll keep doing the book. Don't worry. We'll have your back. We're going to do the book anyway. And I was like, really? I was like, because you were going to drop the book a year ago if she left. And they're like, no, we're in this. Don't worry. We got your back. Well, having my back meant they wanted me to completely redo the first issue. Like, they literally wanted a whole new artist so that they had consistency. And I was like, okay. It just didn't feel right to me. But I was like, well, I guess. I was like, well, who are you thinking of for the art? Like, we would need a test page, you know? And like, once I started putting up like those types of roadblocks, like they wanted me to go with the first person I suggested as someone to even just consider. And I was like, but she needs to do a test page. Like, and I was like, and also per my contract, you still have to pay me back for my first issue fees, and you have to pay to remake the issue. So I'm like, do you really want to do that? Yeah. I probably shouldn't have brought that up, but they literally would have had to pay me twice to do the book, to do the first issue if they did that. And the next thing I know, they're like, yeah, we're not doing the book anymore.
Lest you think making comic books is easy.
Yeah.
So, Mariana agreed to stay on the book with me after that, but it took me a while to get the money together. At the time, we were getting ready to move across the country. And then we ended up like having to do the personal loan, and that's just not feasible, especially when you have a kid, to continue to do personal loans to fund your comic book. So, especially when you don't make any money off of them. Like, I have a couple of people who think I've like made money because of the Kickstarters, and I haven't made a dime. Anything I get from the Kickstarters goes right back into the book, to like the production of it, or the shipping, or there's like a million little costs that come with a Kickstarter. And so I finally got issue 2 done. I started looking for another publisher, and I wasn't getting any bites. So I was like, well, how do I get this out in the world? Maybe if I start building an audience, I'll get more publishers interested. And I had a couple of friends who were doing Kickstarters. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll see if I can figure out jumping into this world. So kind of like what I did with Meltdown, with learning how to write comic books, I talked to all my friends who had done Kickstarters so I could understand the process of how you do a Kickstarter and what's involved and what it will take from you, from your life to run a Kickstarter and everything. And then I found someone that could actually build the page, because I don't know how to do graphic work. And that's Clay Adams, who's done Red Xmas. He just had a Kickstarter for PBOW. I want to say that stands for Pregnant Bitches of War.
Hold up. So we're talking about something else, but how did all of you watching, why didn't you tell me about Pregnant Bitches of War? Because
it's literally a group of pregnant women that get thrown back in time and are trying to, like, I think, take out Hitler.
Guys, find this, back this if you don't know about it. Clay Adams, I actually retweeted and liked my post about you coming on today, so go find that.
I'll be right back.
Jennifer's like, I gotta go read this other book, sorry.
Pregnant feminist killing Hitler.
Yeah.
That is
so
in her wheelhouse.
Okay, but let's go ahead and keep talking about because
so Clay has been my Kickstarter guru. So he builds all my Kickstarter pages, and especially through the first Kickstarter, he held my hand through like everything that needed to be done with running it. I mean, it's almost like a full-time job trying to run a Kickstarter, and especially when you don't fund right away, it ends up becoming like a bit of a nail biter. My last Kickstarter didn't fund until like less than 12 hours before it finished. And so that, of course, like added into my own just natural anxiety of, oh my God, everyone hated issue 3. They're not coming back to back it because they hate the book. You know what I mean? Like you start like getting stuck in your own head when you don't see the numbers going up. And I just had a lot of stuff going on in my life at the time, like right before the end. My aunt and uncle, their youngest daughter, died right before the end of the Kickstarter. And so I ended up like having a couple of my friends just kind of manage the campaign for the last, like, I think 2 days. Cause I was just like, I just wasn't in the headspace to keep pushing with it. And I was very grateful that it funded, because, you know, you don't get any money. I already had like Mariana drawing issue 4. So I was like, how am I going to pay? How am I going to pay her? I was like, I got a publisher now. Like I have deadlines I have to deliver on. I'm like, if this falls apart, I'm like totally screwed. So it was a nail biter. But yeah, like when I did issue 1 and 2, the pandemic was like just sort of in the background on the horizon. And then by the time I started working on issue 3, we were in full lockdown mode. So it's been very surreal working on a comic that actually deals with a pandemic. And then on top of it, having it so closely parallel what we're going through at the same time has been eerie.
You know, it's so funny that you say that, because I know you and I have talked before, and you had mentioned that like this was created pre 2020, like years before
Years
2020.
before. Yeah.
And there's moments in, like, specifically issue 2, where people are talking about, I don't know if it's like social distancing, and you see people wearing masks, and I'm like, you lied to me. Like, this clearly
But yet
was,
not our protagonist.
you clearly like made this in 2020, and the way that this parallels is absolutely nuts.
It was
And
eerie reading it out. It was
very
real eerie.
It is. And, you know, it's like things I meant as humor now come across as like creepy.
You were living through it, writing it as your document.
I manifested it to life. I mean, that's just what happened.
Damn it.
Thanks.
So with the Kickstarter, like, with the learning experience, is there anything like going forward now that you know, like, from the learning experience of it, that you know that you could do better in the future with it? Like, because Kickstarter, it seems to be like one of those things you can either do it well, or your first one's a disaster and you kind of learn from it.
I mean, I was lucky. My first one went really well, but I think that was because I was like, I have to be utterly shameless about asking anyone and everyone I know for money, because I need to make this work. And so the first go, and they tell you that, like, all the people I talk to tell you that your first Kickstarter is usually friends and family and a handful of fans. And then you're building on that fan base from campaign to campaign. So the hope is that your fan base grows with every issue and that they continue coming back to back the book. So I'm hoping the next one I want to say I'm having the next one in September is going to go better than the one I had in February and March, because that one was rough. That one was really, and I don't know why. Because the second one was like super easy. It was like, it went very well. You know, we funded over, and it wasn't like super stressful. But the one in February and March was like, it was a nail biter. It was absolutely a nail biter. And I just don't know what I did differently. I don't know if it was just a timing thing. I mean, there's so many like quirks about Kickstarter that are beyond your control. Like, if you don't have a good first day out of the gate, then you don't get promoted on the platform properly, and that will most of your backers actually come from people that just use the platform, that see it come up on their feeds.
Mm-hmm.
But then you'll get people who are established writers and creators that like use that platform when really I don't think they need to. Like, the Scott Snyder one kind of still.
I would say Berserker.
Yeah, that too. But Scott
Which
Snyder
is selling like hotcakes in all the comic book stores.
Yeah.
So it's like, why did they need to do that?
And especially since it's published by Boom Studios, like, to me, I don't know. I'm glad that it's there, because then hopefully it gets normal people who maybe wouldn't have gone to the Kickstarter platform to go get it. But at the same time, I'm like, is it taking money away from other creators? So I think there's a little bit of a balance there.
Yeah, like with Noctera, it came out on Image. Like, Image immediately took it. So I was like, why go that route? You really didn't need to, except to, get these perks. Like, I don't know, like, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, it's weird how certain people use it for different things. It's like, there was, and you never know what campaigns are going to go really big. So there's this nonprofit that I'm associated with called Brink Literacy. They do the Friction quarterly anthology, and they just did a Kickstarter for tarot cards, a literary tarot card, because they were trying to keep themselves going, because when the pandemic hit, they were one of those businesses that got really affected by it and lost a lot of their ability to sell their books, because they sold their books mainly at like Barnes and Noble. And so they were hoping to just break even at like 80,000 to do this and to hopefully get a little bit of extra money to help them keep going. And they ended up at like almost 800,000. Wow. With I think 11,000 backers or something like that. It was crazy. It like blew their minds, because it wasn't, they were like super happy about it. I mean, it's like probably funding them for like a couple of years at least.
But then at the same time, it could be giving, because it's that like scale, right? So it could be like, now you have 10 times the workload that you need to do. Like, are you going to?
Well, they got a fulfillment center, because they were just like, we can't do this ourselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 11,000 backers. You got to have a fulfillment center for that many.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like, I know Jennifer during lockdown, she was just throwing stuff at Kickstarters and like.
Oh, I continue to. I think that there was one day where I ended up doing like three. This was like 2 months ago, where I did 3 Kickstarters in one day. So I appreciate them a lot.
Yeah, I feel like they were the next best thing to conventions for the past year with the pandemic, because I met so many new creators just by doing my own and backing a bunch of others. And, you know, one of the best ways to actually help get new backers is to cross promote with other comic campaigns. You know, when you do your updates, is to promote other campaigns that are running to just help get new eyes on it.
I also respect the hell out of like the way you've hustled, like going on any and every show, like getting yourself out there. No, seriously, like I respect the hell of it, because there are people who won't do that kind of work and they're just like, well, it's out there, I'm just going to sit back. But like, I respect people who believe in their product and are like, I'm going to hustle. Like, I'm going to get this out there. Like Josh Williamson, when he was writing Nailbiter and Ghosted, was doing giveaways on there on Twitter. He was sending every comic book shop PDFs to get them to talk about it.
That's what I've been trying to do. I think I've emailed like 300 shops every month I've been in previews just to be like, please buy the book.
I mean, it helps having at least one person in that shop go, hey, you're buying this. Maybe like you want to try this. I read this. Like, word of mouth and like hand selling. And I don't think enough people do that.
Yeah, and I go to there's only 3 stores in my area that carry the book, and they're all over an hour away from me. And so I try to, I didn't get to the one in Scranton this time, but on Wednesday I went to the one in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and the one in Philadelphia, and I dropped off stuff that they could give out with the books to the people that bought them. And that's what I did on the first one too. I actually hit all 3 stores and dropped goodies off.
Are you, now that things are opening back up, because I feel like what you're doing right now is you're doing like a virtual like road tour, right? So
I'm trying,
seriously, and so I feel like that's what creators have needed to do to kind of pivot during and I mean, obviously you envisioned the pandemic happening, so I feel like you've been incredibly seeing around the curve.
Didn't really work out the way I intended it to.
So you were just prepared. You knew the pandemic was going to happen.
You knew the pandemic was coming, yeah.
You literally wrote it, so you've been able to just like do this like virtual book tour. But do you anticipate doing like maybe in-store signings at comic book stores or even comic book conventions? And have you gone to a comic book convention as someone on the other side of the table? Like, have you exhibited at a comic book store or at a comic book Comic-Con?
So there's one signing that I'm set up for definitely. It's at Jaff Comics in Bethlehem. It's on their free comic book day. And I have 2 other creators that I'm friends with who are definitely going to be there. I'm trying to get a third signed up, but I haven't heard back from Jaff if they're going to be okay with that or not. So that's the only signing I have on the books right now. The store in Philadelphia said maybe November, because they had kind of taken over the space during the pandemic for other things and they have to like clear it out. But I haven't had a lot of interest from stores for signings. I've been trying to get a couple in New Jersey where I was born and raised, kind of like the homegirl thing, to see if like, she was born and raised here, type of thing. But they seemed interested. I have to follow up with them, but it's been really hard to get any sort of signings. So that's been a little disappointing, but I'm also like a small indie creator. So I just might not have the pull that they're looking for to take the time and the money on.
Third Eye in Baltimore seems to be one of those places that always brings like indie writers and creators in constantly.
Well, I have a friend who lives in DC, and I know he's been trying down in DC because he wants to. It's my friend Himkar, so we've been trying to do like dual signings with both of us, and he hasn't been getting any bites either. But I need to dig into that more. Conventions, it's more of a money issue, really, for conventions. But I'm hoping to do I know my publisher wants me to go to Florida for a big one that happens over the weekend of the 24th.
Is that Tampa Bay Comic Con or
Megacon?
Megacon. It's
Okay.
Megacon.
That's where I am.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, so my publisher wants me out there for that one. They feel like that one's the best one if I'm going to spend money to come out to that one. I just got to figure it out because it's also the 24th is my son's birthday. But I was like, well, maybe I'll take him to Disney World.
Yeah. If I can, so I would say 100% Megacon, because I'm from Florida, but I moved away a couple years ago.
It's got a good artist creators alley there with small press.
I would also say I think
Heroes.
that Tampa Bay Comic Con is also coming up, which is another one. But what you just mentioned, Heroes Con in North Carolina is one of the best comic book conventions I have ever been to.
For creators, it's amazing.
Creators, they don't do, I mean, when I was there several years ago, they weren't doing, like they don't have, I mean, I may piss some people off, but they don't do like wrestling stars and movie stars from 40 years ago. And this
for comic fans by comic fans.
It really.
All right. Let me write that one down.
Heroes Con in Charlotte,
Con.
North Carolina is like an institution in the area. I would that would be like if I was like go to one comic convention, I would be like go to Heroes Con.
Heroes Con?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I could definitely look into that. I mean, when I lived in California, it was so much easier to get to conventions because I lived in Santa Monica, so I was able to just like drive to like San Diego, to Anaheim, to Los Angeles.
North Carolina's not a terrible drive for you.
No, it's not a terrible drive. Yeah. And where I am in Pennsylvania, because it's such a rural area, like I'm almost 2 hours outside of Philadelphia, and it's like, it's just really, it feels like it's hard to find conventions. The only convention, well, I'm trying to see if I can hook up with Marvin Wynn, who does The Edge for Second Sight, to do a couple of conventions with him, because he's in Pittsburgh. So I figure if, we can try to figure it out. That way, I get to pay for half the table fee, so it's like, it saves him money. I'm hoping to do one or two with him if I can swing it. And then the only convention I've done so far, there was this like tiny little convention. It was like right when the things were starting to get lifted. I think I hadn't even had my first shot yet. So it was at least 3 months ago. And it was my first convention. They gave me the table for free. So I was like super excited about it. And I get there and there's like maybe 5 vendors. I'm the only comic book person. And I sold 1 copy of my book.
I was going to say that could go either way because then you've almost got the market cornered. And,
no.
The thing about being at comic book conventions too, with that, it's like you walk through Artist Alley and there's 100 people trying to pitch you the same, not the same book, but they're giving you the spiel. And I mean, I've met some fantastic creators doing that, but if sometimes the smaller conventions work out in that way, but seems like it did not.
No, well, you know what the problem was too? They gave me like a speaking slot, right? So we're just in this like big, almost like auditorium space, and they were doing karaoke before I came on, and they had a Tusken Raider. A guy dressed as a Tusken Raider who was grunting along to Ice Ice Baby. And then they were like, okay, and we're done now. So I could go up to talk, and literally everyone left. There was like 1 woman sat in the audience, and then the guy who like hooked up the stage for me, and that was it. And no one else was interested.
Yeah, Megacon Orlando had a lot of creators before they hit. Like Vanessa Del Rey had a tiny little table there. Scotty Young back in the day. Mark
oh my
Brooks.
Gosh.
Yep.
And then like George Perez is like just a constant there. And
oh, nice.
One of the nicest creators you will ever talk to and meet.
That's cool. All right, I definitely want to look into it because I'd like to do something fun for my son's.
You got SeaWorld right down there. Everything a little kid could ever enjoy, like right there, Legoland.
He's been to Disney, but he was so young, he doesn't remember it anymore. Like he went to Disneyland. He's been to Disney World twice, all pre-pandemic. He has no memory of any of this.
Jennifer,
that's all right. I show him pictures. I'm like, look, you've met Mickey, and he'd be like, oh yeah, I met Mickey. He doesn't remember it, but that's all right. He's got the pictures.
to me, like, I would just, I mean, how old you're 3 or 4?
He's almost 4, so he's at the perfect age for it. And he's one of those kids. You know how there's always the picture of the kids that like scream when they meet Santa, or he was not that kid. He was the kid from even when he was a little baby that would like laugh his butt off and like smile, like run right up to Santa. Like the characters at Disney loved him because he was tiny and he loved them. And so they would keep coming back to him because he didn't scream. He didn't cry. He like was like, hey.
That's what I would.
Uh-oh, she froze.
It's been happening a lot lately.
She'll come back.
This happened during our last stream.
Oh, no.
Okay,
there we go. Wait.
One of the last times I went to Orlando, I mean, this was years and years and years ago, but I was with my partner's nephews, and they ended up getting a hotel. It was like a big family one, and their sister and kids and their mom. So it was a hotel, but it was at a oh my goodness, like water park, like a mini water park.
Oh,
and I swear,
yeah.
like the kids absolutely loved it. And it was, you're paying for the hotel and all of it at once. So it's almost like a mini theme park that you don't have to like wait in line for. And then of course they had like, moms can go get margarita and stuff. So it was fantastic.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Plus I figure if I make it sort of like a work trip thing, I can try to write some of the expenses off.
Of course.
Yes.
Right.
I did have some questions about the story in here.
What? We're going to ask questions about the story.
Yes.
Well, we're here to talk about a comic book?
So, you threw me for a twist when our protagonist by issue 2 is no longer the protagonist. Where I was like, wait, what?
Wait a minute. Yeah, you know what? One of my first bits of advice I got when I was like trying to figure out comic book writing was to not do that. And I was like, no, I'm going to do that. Because like she has to, like, she's not the main character. This is the way it is.
It threw me for a twist because I was like, I thought she was. And I'm like, oh no, it is our scientist who is finding out,
But
trying to help the world.
She continues in her own way. She continues to be a presence in the story.
It's almost like it reminded me of The Killing in a way, where it's like the young woman who's killed isn't like the protagonist,
Rosie.
But the story, follows her, and it's this like mystery. I mean, granted, like that was however many seasons long, 3 seasons, and so anyways, I liked that a lot.
So in your letter at the end, you said that Repo the Genetic Opera was one of your influences, and weirdly, like reading it, there was another movie that had Repo in it that made me think of Repo Men that had Jude Law in it.
Yeah, I've never seen it, and I've actually like purposefully not seen it because I think it came out like while I was writing this, or like not that long before I was writing this. And I was like, I don't want to get influenced.
It was just the weird thing of this corporation, and then they send them back to take back the organs, where this is something else, and you feel bad for I want to say Trevor,
no, Matt.
Is it Matt? Yeah, where he has the best intentions, and what he did is completely perverted.
Yeah, exactly. What he created gets completely perverted into something he never wanted it to be in the first place.
It's kind of sad on his end, especially when he's haunted by his wife.
Exactly. Yep.
Those were some, especially recalling him. I mean, spoiler alert for issue 2, but him in the hospital, and man, like there are some moments in there that were, even though they were brief, it hit hard.
Wait till you see the flashbacks in issue 3.
Don't do that to me. I'm kidding. Break my heart.
I did have another question because Jen and I in the past, when we've talked about film and some series, did you have trepidation kind of using rape in this? Because I know sometimes it as a plot device can be like uncanny valley where it's just it's hard. And like sometimes like during the 90s, for some reason, that was a fucking plot device just sprinkled everywhere.
Yeah, it was.
Plot device, yeah.
I
don't necessarily want to say that let me go ahead and preface this. Typically, if any book has something like that, I put it down and I will never touch it again. And I feel like most of the people who do end up writing things like that don't do it in a very nuanced way, and not necessarily that, in my opinion, any book does it well. But I think that the way that it is touched upon, it's not necessarily talking about that issue. It's talking about the culture that leads to things like that. And I think that that's where like the nuance is. And I always go back to Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, where I feel like that did that type of plot and nuanced it very well. So
also the mother, when she approaches Matt, when she goes, she was raped, and he's like, well, no, that you can't do that. And she's like, yeah, well,
Oh,
you know, when you're sold into slavery, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I had this one podcast when issue 1 came out that like totally eviscerated me. They didn't have me on, but they just like totally eviscerated me just over that one scene. And I felt like, I mean, obviously they have a point, like it's been overused as a plot device and everything else, but I felt like they were missing the reason for it. They felt like the reason I had it in there was to make the duplicant system seem bad. And I was like, the duplicant system is bad without the rape. This isn't meant to make the duplicant system seem bad. Like the duplicant system is bad by virtue of what it is. You don't have a choice but to be put into it. You don't have a choice but to be saddled with this debt. And you don't have a choice but to be sold off to work in jobs you have no control over. That on its surface is horrible and bad. Like, I don't need to make that system worse. What I felt like I needed to do was to give her more impetus to break out of it, because there's nothing legally she could have done to break herself out of this system she was in, as we saw. Like, there's no laws, there's no protection to get her out of this. This is the way it is for everyone. And one person trying to fight against this, especially in this particular world, she wouldn't have had much luck, even as someone who is an attorney. So I needed to give her that extra kind of like kick in the ass to be like, this is my bridge too far. This is because if she had a job that was like, all right, this isn't the best job, but I guess I can like suffer through it, and you know, maybe I can figure out a way to like move up in the company. You know what I mean? Like, the system sucks and I don't like being in the system, but maybe I can work there was no workaround for her. There was no like, well, maybe I can move up in the system. Maybe I can get like them to transfer my debt to someone else, like type of thing like that. There was nothing. She was stuck doing this work that she didn't want to do. And this guy was going to make her do it whether she wanted to or not. And she had no one to have her back. And so
basically human trafficked her. Like, he's like, you're going to be a sex worker, basically.
Yeah. And so I had other ideas of what to do with her. I definitely tossed other things around, but nothing felt like it had enough of a dramatic punch to push her forward to chase down the actual head of this company and to literally put herself in danger of being killed in violation of the Duplicant Act. Like, because that's another thing that keeps you in the system. It's like, if you don't do this, you can literally be arrested. You know what I mean? And plus there's the rumor that if you don't stay in the program, they're going to kill you with your nanobots that are in you. So it's like, it just felt like she needed something like really dramatic to do this. And it was hard for me to do that scene. That scene was really hard to do because I have family members who've been victims of sexual abuse. And I know that a lot of people, you know, don't always take it seriously. So that's why that was the test page for Mariana, because I needed to be able to show it without showing it. And I needed to show the aftermath of what it would feel like emotionally for what she just went through. And that's why it was also important for me to not just have it, you know, I think part of the issue too with that podcast that kind of like rips it apart was they didn't have issue 2, so they didn't know that I was going to like bring it up again. Does that make sense? Like, so that's why I went out of my way to make sure that we touch upon it again in issue 2, because it's like, this isn't something that should be swept under the rug. And don't worry, I will have another scene for Luke in issue 5.
Yeah.
Because we need to see what happens with him. And so he will be back in issue 5. And I'm pretty sure people will be happy with what I've created for him.
Is it like girl with the dragon tattoo, like draped with the...
You know, you mentioned a little bit about this illusion of choice within the system. And I think that the comics that speak to me most are going to be the ones that speak that truth to power. And I think this one definitely does, where we think about our current medical system and we think about our current like healthcare system and banking institutions and all of that. And it definitely to me speaks about this illusion of choice, like just go get a better job, or, you know, things like that. And you mentioned about you get this, you think you have the choice to escape the system, but in reality, you can't. I really appreciated that. I could like dissect the politics of that and like go on a rant. I won't right now.
Well, even the healthcare system, like if you have to go to the hospital for an emergency, you're immediately financially leveraged for years.
Well, and especially if you end up out of your own volition going to a hospital that doesn't take your insurance. It's like when you're in an emergency, you don't have a choice about where they're taking you. And I always found that like really ridiculous. Like it was interesting to me when I was pregnant and I was under Obamacare at that point because my husband's job's insurance was actually crap. And the insurance we were getting through California, through the state exchange, was like way better. And so everything during the actual pregnancy itself was covered at 100%, which is great, you know, because I had like a gazillion ultrasounds, you know, blood work, all that, no cost whatsoever. But then when you go for the actual birth, that's when you get charged all this money. And we ended up having to try to like get the bill reduced. And I think we still ended up owing like $4,000 after the fact, which is crazy. Yeah. Because it's like the most expensive part of it, you still have to pay. And I think it took us like 2 years to pay it off or something like that. And even that was only because they don't let you go under a lower amount. Like, it's like, you know, like if you get a bill from the IRS, they only work with you to a certain extent. They're like, all right, well, instead of 3 months paying this off, we'll give you a year. And it's like, you have to pay it whether you have it or not. It was kind of the same thing with the hospital. They looked at our finances. I think they dropped the bill by like $1,000. And then, you know, they were like, this is what you have to pay. And that's it. There's no negotiating after that.
Yeah.
I am 100% fascinated by Thomas and the black market. Like, when do we start learning more about Robert? Sorry, I'm thinking of Thomas for some reason. Sorry.
Yeah, you definitely get into him more in issue 3. You learn a lot more about him there too.
Good, like seeing the picture of him and Matt, and I'm like, all right, let's get into this history. Like,
yeah, I definitely tease at what their relationship was like. Issue 4 gets into their backstory more, like how they came to be not friends anymore.
It sounds like it's going to be like one of those philosophical, like, anger issues, at least from the way it's playing out and how he's portrayed at the end of the book with the preacher.
Oh yeah, I went to a dark place with that.
yes, you did. And I'm a horror fan, and I'm like, I'm here for it.
Yeah, that page was a little tricky to get right. I think I had written it a couple of different ways when he's doing the operation before I got that, before I felt like it worked visually. But yeah.
That's great. When does issue 3? Because the issue 2 came out last week.
Yes.
When is issue 3? When should people anticipate issue 3 comes out?
I think my publisher shifted all of our release dates to the last week of the month because we've been having such trouble with Diamond. Right?
Surprise.
Look at that happening. So I believe it'll be the end of August, but then there's a bit of a delay between 4 and 5. So my publisher wanted to keep October as just a horror month. And so normally 4 would have been out in October, but now 4 will be out in November and 5 will be out in January.
Excellent. Do you, I know that some, especially smaller publishers, don't do a lot of collected like trades. Do you know if Second Sight, have you talked to them about doing a collected trade of this, or?
I believe they're planning to do a collected trade, but I think in my contract it mentions that if they do it, I think it's something they have to kickstart to be able to fund, because I would imagine the printing costs are considerably higher for such a big book like that.
Yeah.
And I just put out the order number for anybody who wants to order Duplicant number 3 through previews at their LCS.
I do want to give people a little bit of information. So on previews now, you can order, like, you don't have to depend on your store, whatever they get. You just have to do it off the shelf or go in and do the pull list. Right now, previews is doing something where if your shop is part of it, you can actually go in and order it directly from previews to pick up from your store. I would also say my store doesn't do that, but they use Comics Hub, and that's how I ordered it, through the Comics Hub system. So if the whole like going into a shop and like starting a pull list is kind of like magical words to you that don't make sense, or you just don't want to like talk to a person and you just want to like order it through an app, you can go to Preview's website and just, if your shop participates, you can do that.
Oh, that's cool. That's good to know.
Which you might be able to find a shop that does mail order as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure like Midtown probably more than likely has it if you need to go through them. Thing from Another World, I know, carries a lot of indies. Yeah. Or you can call around. Like, I'm sure if they called your shop, they would set up mail order.
Yeah, I would imagine it's Jaff Comics in Bethlehem, Comics on the Green in Scranton, and Atomic City in Philadelphia are all carrying it.
And Jennifer's store, I'm sure, would do it if you called.
Yeah, either Books with Pictures or, I mean, there's 20 shops here within an hour.
Oh, great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's insane here. I love Portland a lot. But Books with Pictures especially is very good at getting indies. I would also say that, well, I don't know. I would say Books with Pictures is a fantastic shop. Yeah.
I always ask this, is there like an established character that if you got a chance to write that you would love to write, that you have a story in your head already, or are you more interested in just doing your own stories?
I would say a little bit of both. I definitely have a couple other stories in my head that I'd love to do, you know, if time and money are on my side. And I actually have a short comic called The Hotel that's up for free through my Linktree. It's on Gumroad. And as far as like an established character, I would say anything from Fables. I mean, I know that series isn't going anymore, but I just loved Fables. That was like what really got me into reading. Yeah, that's what really got me into reading comic books. And then right now, like one of my favorite series is White Ash by Charlie Stickney. I would love to do Galarian because she's just such an awesome character. I love that character.
I think that I do a show on Fridays with Will the Beast Fitness, but I think that you also did an interview with Greg, Bearded Comic Bro.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He loves that series also. That's like one of his favorite series.
It's really, really well done. And Charlie's one of the nicest people in the business. He also works with Scout now, and he's just like, whenever I have a question about anything to do with the comic industry, I can ask him, and he always takes the time to help me out and answer me. So he's just a really good guy. And he supports like a gazillion Kickstarters on top of it.
It's weird. Like I always say, I'm going to start supporting more, and then like I start looking at titles, and I get overwhelmed. And I'm like, all right, I'll get back to this. Like, there's just so much stuff on there.
There is, and it's like it's hard to figure out. Like, well, is this going to actually come through? Because there's obviously like people who've been burned with Kickstarters they've backed and they've never gotten products. So that's like a big thing. Is you always want to make sure that you're fulfilling on time and communicating with your backers so they don't feel like you've disappeared and you're not going to give them what they paid for.
I've been supporting Friday the 13th fan film by this company, Stomp. And Oh my God, the pandemic, like it pushed everything back a year.
Yeah.
Like they ended up releasing it before the Blu-rays came out on YouTube just because they could
man.
do it on there.
Right.
Still, it's the best Friday the 13th I've watched like in 20 years.
Oh wow.
It's
cool.
better than anything they've put out.
Yeah.
But it was kind of fun backing it and then seeing my name in the credits and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's always fun seeing the name in the credits.
It's just such a weird kind of thing for the indie Kickstarter, Indiegogos, because I imagine just the logistics of getting it from imagination to getting printed is just overwhelming to a degree.
Yeah, definitely the mechanics. Like, I mean, once you have it down, it's like, okay, like this is who I get this stuff from, and this is what I do with this. But the first time around, it's like, how do I even fold a Gemini mailer? Like, how does this work? What's the best way to keep the comic in there so it doesn't get damaged? Like, did I do this right? Am I messing it up?
So you use the blue painter's tape and tape it.
That's what I use. I use the blue painter's tape. I'm like, okay, what can I use to tape it down that's not going to destroy the comic? And
it's the best way.
Yep.
It's one of the little interesting things you learn along the way.
Hello again.
Hi again. It took me like 10 times, but I did go ahead and post the link tree, your link tree, and the right one is in there now. So I do just want to go ahead and I did, and the first one is the hotel short comic.
Yay! Yeah, and so if anyone wants to spend money to get it, they can. The money goes to 2 different charities that I have listed at the site, but otherwise it's completely free. If anyone, it's a 6-page comic that was in. Speaking of Clay Adams again, Nightmare Theater Anthology, which is an anthology he did with David Schrader. David Schrader did Baby Badass with Action Labs.
Clay Adams is going to get a lot of hits for Pregnant Bitches Award. That's all I know. Yeah. Like if there's any title that has captured the imagination.
Yep.
So is there anything you'd like to tease for issue 3 to kind of whet everybody's appetite?
So issue 3 picks up right where we left off in issue 2, which is a big cliffhanger. And it, you're not going to know Matt's ultimate fate in issue 3 until the very end of the issue.
Cliffhanger. I know you love your cliffhangers.
I love my cliffhangers.
Is that more of your writing on TV where you got to leave them wanting to come back?
Yeah, exactly. It's always you got to leave them so they don't switch channels during a commercial break and you lose them. It's like that mentality.
It's weird. I never think of that with streaming now because of the way it is. Like,
it's the old school, like commercial break. Like, back, I mean, I was like the kid growing up where I was like the remote, I went up to the TV and click, 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 click.
100%. I was just like, I'll be back. Yeah, I got a minute to see what else is on real quick.
Yeah, exactly.
I appreciate you coming on and having this discussion with us. Hopefully we sold some more books for you and got the word out. We don't have a big following, but we always have great information. We weirdly got Rodney Barnes on here for 2 episodes with us.
Oh, nice.
With Philadelphia. One of the most interesting fellas you could ever talk to, and he's got a new company he's starting. And Steve Orlando, if you've read his stuff, came on.
Oh, very cool.
Anything else coming out that we should know about or TV work?
Yeah, so I'm working on the pilot script for Nabarang, which is my animated series that Sapphire Sandello and I created. It's based on stories and her own life experiences. She's a Filipino-American animator and paranormal expert, and she's just awesome. So I'm super honored to have her helping me bring her vision to life. And so we're hoping to sell that as a series. And then Friction, which is the Break Literacy anthology, I'm going to have a story in their Unseen issue, which is set in a frozen apocalypse and follows a woman and her dog. So another, happy-go-lucky story.
Where can we order that from?
Don't do that to us again. We just got over 2020, and now we're giving us a frozen apocalypse.
A frozen apocalypse.
Okay.
Well, we already
and
have the heat apocalypse
with no sun. A frozen apocalypse with no sun.
Sounds like Portland. Except this last weekend where it was 115 for like 3 days straight.
I saw.
Even
That's
Canada got a heat wave.
Yeah.
It's in like the same Pacific Northwest area. It was nuts.
Yeah, no, that's not good at all. That's just.
That anthology book you were just talking about, where can you order that from?
So I think if you search Brink Literacy, or if you search Friction, they have like is that what it's called? I never remember what those things are. The little brackets around the R. It should come up, and I believe you can just order off their website. It also comes out in Barnes and Noble now that Barnes and Noble is back up and running. Okay. They had it as part of their Kickstarter, but their Kickstarter just wrapped.
Okay.
And I'm going to be doing, in honor of my cousin who died in February, we're going to be doing a GoFundMe soon, because I'm going to be doing like a legacy item through Brink Literacy with her. So that'll help fund their nonprofit mission, but also kind of perpetuate her memory. Because she used to write poetry. So I thought that because they do poetry a lot and short fiction and comics. So I thought it would be a good place to do something.
Awesome. That's great. If you have anything else you'd ever like to promote, just go ahead and hit us up on Instagram DM, and we'd be more than happy to have you on. You were a fantastic guest. And
thank you.
Everybody go support Karla and go check her out on Instagram to keep up on what's coming out. You'll probably see her on a bunch of other shows. I know our friend John's Comics with Kids, he said that you had sent him the PDFs. Fantastic guy. Like he's literally one of the greatest people in the community.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
And then our other friend, Just a Rican in his comics, has an exclusive for Marvin Wins.
For Marvin, yeah.
Yes.
That's actually what I'm trying to do, is I have an exclusive for issue 2 cover, and I've been I can't find anyone who's interested in it. It's so awesome. Can I share it? Is that like possible?
Please.
All right, hold on. Let me. If I do like a share screen thing, I got to see if I have it on my desktop.
Yeah. Otherwise, if you have a link to it,
yeah.
you can drop
give me a
it.
Second. I'll drop
you might have to DM
chat.
it to one of us, because you have to be a mod to drop it in the chat, unfortunately.
Oh, well, I can do it in the private chat.
Oh,
right?
okay. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Hold on. Give me a second. I just gotta log into my Dropbox so I can grab it. Logging in ever so slowly. Now it's having me verify.
Oh, goodness.
Spiral Galaxy to prove you're a human.
The robot is asking me to tell it that I'm not a robot.
Okay, variant art. And there we go. Okay, copy link. Getting link. Okay, there we go.
Okay, I see it now. Oh, come on.
You try that.
This is where we need our Jeopardy theme music.
Well, that's
alrighty.
So, okay, we got it.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay, so everybody check it out. I know Jen does a very kind of raucous Sunday show too. If you ever want to go on there and promote your book, because she has way more viewers and subscribers on her channel than I do. And I'm sure Mars would love to talk about. Oh.
Yeah, so that's available as an exclusive cover. It depicts a scene right from issue 2, and Mariana is the one that did the art on that.
Yes, and Mariana, I'm maybe not talking about her art enough.
Her art is insane.
Very much, if you love the emote of the people in the story, she does such a fantastic job with the emotion being portrayed by the people in it. I'm probably doing a poor job explaining it like how I want to, but especially after the rape scene, with just Pam's facial gestures and how even afterward, just the haggard look and just humiliated and everything else, and as you would be after this. And I'm glad that you talked about that scene in this, because it was something I wanted to bring up just because, like, I know a scene like that, you don't do that lightly.
No, and it's interesting because, like, I really haven't had anyone ask me about it, and I had my publisher told me, and I don't know if this is true, that like my comic is the only one to depict something like that. Is that possible? Because that just I would be surprised if that's the case.
Watchmen, kind of.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I couldn't imagine that I'm the only one that's broken ground on depicting something.
Recently, though,
like
I haven't
that.
seen, like, everybody, like, publishers are like, no, don't even get near it. And again, like, it can be displayed, conveyed as, like, a plot device, where I don't really feel it's a plot device. It's just in there to show how horrible this system is.
Yeah, it's
and how you can get away with it.
Exactly. And, again, it's not something that, like, I think a lot of people, if they aren't reading the rest of the issues, aren't going to see that it's not just going to happen and never be spoken of or dealt with again. It's going to be brought up again. Like, you're not really going to hear about it in issue 3 and 4, but it'll come up again in issue 5 for sure. There's a big scene with Luke.
Are there any more streams you're going to be on, or anybody interviewing you in the near future that you have booked?
I might be on Spine Ticks tonight. They go on late, like 11 o'clock, because they're talking about me as one of their indie picks of the week. So I think I'm hopping on with them later, but I don't think I have anyone else booked at the moment. I have a couple of feelers out, but nothing booked yet.
Jen, what do you have coming up?
My days have been like I seriously, for just 10 seconds now, I'm like, what day is it? So tomorrow is Sunday. Tomorrow, Sunday morning, I'll be going on with Mars. And last week we had we talked about like queer representation in comics. So we had a couple of friends join us. So anyways, we didn't get to talk about new books last week. So tomorrow we're going to go on and talk about some new books from the last couple of weeks. And then on Friday, I do a show with Wildebeest Fitness, where, like I said, Greg, and I feel like there's a couple others that are in the works, but for right now, it's mostly just the Sunday and the Friday show.
And for anybody who missed it, we did our book club last week for Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe.
I think it's Kobabe. Yeah.
Okay. Decent amount of views on it. The hours watched was good, and I kind of thought it was a good episode. It was important to discuss, so I was very happy with it. And I have Celluloid and Scotch coming up. I know we're talking Fear Street 94, the R.L. Stine movie that just popped up on Netflix. We have 4 movies that we're talking about. I think we might do a one-shot episode for Black Widow, just a reaction video when that comes out. And then book club for July, it's my pick, Descender by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. Jennifer Gambit, myself, with Read Across the Stars, Dillbot, and Cartoon Sid. So
John was talking about that, and I was like, you should be on with us. And I'm like, I don't know if I really get to invite people.
Oh no, I'd have John on. Like, they want to know good comics too.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know how many people we could have clucking over each other. But we always have people cancel last minute, so that's a thing. Again, thank you so much, Karla, for coming on and putting this on my radar, because literally I did not know it was out there. And I am now a fan, and I will be picking it up and ordering it somehow, some way. I wish it was in digital because it's so much easier for me to get. I'm surprised. Second Sight.
I think they said they're doing digital sometime in the fall. I don't remember why there's a delay. There's some reasoning with how that's working, but it will eventually be on Comixology.
Excellent. So thank you. We're gonna end this. If you have any last words.
No, thank you for having me on. I always appreciate anyone who takes the time to talk with me about my book and enjoys it.
I love getting new books put in my radar, because sometimes there's so much out there you miss. And Second Sight is a publisher that I haven't really gotten much from. We had a couple of
they
people
should send you
championing
more
them.
stuff then. They've got so many books. They keep signing new people like every day, I think.
Yeah, I know Marvin Wynn is constantly on our friends' live streams, like showing up in chat, and he's out there quite a lot. So he's doing a lot of footwork.
He's putting me to shame. He's putting me to shame with how many shows he's on.
So with that, thank you everybody for watching, and go catch Jen's very loaded new issue show tomorrow. If you didn't know, Jen spends a lot of money on new issues every week, so she's probably got a pile that's
It's
pretty
stupid.
terrible.
It's stupid. Yeah, I was on. I did a show with Bueller, Comics with Bueller, last
You're not
Monday.
a pervert.
I'm not. Well, I mean, I had to say that for the show, but if you watch the Sunday show, like, spoiler alert, I totally am. But I think that I'm gonna need to start the show with, like, hey, if you're one of the 200 new people following the channel, I'm a lot more unhinged when I'm on my own channel. I'm a lot nicer when I'm on someone else's
Just
channel.
go back and watch our old weekly show, which was just like, she started pitching Batman Year 18. Like,
barely legal. It's Batman Year 18.
Barely legal.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's kind of like Spine Ticks. They're drinking on that show, and it's got like an adult rating. You have to be like logged in to watch it. Yeah.
I really enjoyed this chat with you. Thank you, everybody, and go follow Karla and go buy the book. Most importantly, go buy the book.
Go buy it.
Take care, everybody. Bye.